Okay, good evening, everyone. Tonight's shiur, as always, Lilu Nishmat Avi Mori Dover Meir Newman Halevi Imi Marati Rachabat Harav Michael, as well as um, in honor of all of our chayalim. Hashem should watch over them. Then tonight, of course, we're going to talk about parshat Shalach, which talks about one of the more challenging stories in for Am Yisrael. Where we find that we're going to take a 40-year detour on our journey to Eretz Yisrael from Egypt. And we are going to get started with putting once I get my screen share up, we will get going. Tonight we're going to focus actually not so much on the events of the story itself, the report, but we're going to focus more on Hashem's response to what happened. Is tonight's shiur is really Hashem's response to Hashem's dialogue with Moshe following the return of the spies. So, to give us a little bit of background, I'm going to read. We're going to start with the beginning of Perek Yud Daled, which is actually not the beginning of the parsha. Parsha begins in Yud Gimel with Moshe sending out 12 men to Eretz Yisrael, to Eretz Canaan, to see what is there to be seen. He gives them specific orders. They come back and they show everybody the fruit that they brought back, but their report is not necessarily the most favorable report. And as a result, when we begin Perek Yud Daled, it tells us the entire congregation got up and raised. They contributed their voices. It's a very strange way of saying they were upset. They cried, and then it says they cried out on that night. Now the Midrash tells us, of course, that night it was the night of Tish that became of Tisha B'Av, which becomes a day of mourning for Am Yisrael throughout history, until that time when we will be able to fix all of these chataim that happened on Tisha B'Av. Clearly, the primary chet that we have to be mitaken when we think about Tisha B'Av is the chet of the Meraglim. Chet of the Meraglim, if you think about it, was actually twofold. One is the way that they spoke Lashon Hara, and the second is that not only did they speak Lashon Hara, but they spoke Lashon Hara about Eretz Yisrael, and as a result, they rejected and caused Am Yisrael to reject Eretz Yisrael. And those are the two things that we've got to be focusing on, thinking about as we go through reading Shlach, as we go through the summer months where we think about all of the calamities that have happened to Am Yisrael throughout history. Okay. So again, they cried out, they cried out and they complained against Moshe and Aaron, all of Am Yisrael, all of Bnei Yisrael. And what do they say? As we've always say, would have that we would have died in Egypt, we should have died already. Why? Why is Hashem bringing us into this land where we're going to get killed by the sword? All of our children, our wives are going to be taken as captives. Wouldn't we have been better off? Wouldn't we be better off if we just went back to Egypt rather than facing the certain death that they felt awaited them when they got to Eretz Yisrael? They go further. Instead of just complaining, they say one says to his fellow, let's get a rebellion, let's have a coup d'etat, and we'll have a new leader, and we'll go back to Egypt. Moshe and Aaron fell on their faces, presumably in tefillah, lifnei kol adat bnei Yisrael, before all of the congregation. The two of the people who had been those who had gone out to look at the land, Yoshua and Kalev, of course, karu bigdeihem. They tore their garments. When they said, "I'll call Adat bnei Yisrael more," they spoke to all of the congregation, saying, The land that we went to is a beautiful land. And not only is it great, but if Hashem is with us, if Hashem wishes, he will bring us to this land and give it to us. And we know it's an eretz asher he's avat chalav u'davash. It's flowing with milk and honey. And now they make their plea to the people. Ach b'Hashem al timrodu. Do not rebel against Hashem. Because you know what's going to happen if we rebel against Hashem. Don't be afraid of the people in the land. They're like our bread. We can eat them. Their shadows have left them. Hashem itanu. As long as Hashem is with us, we have no need to be fearful of them. However, their words fell on deaf ears. Their response to Yoshua and Kalev, they wanted to start to throw stones at them. Hashem Hashem's presence appeared in Ol Moed El Kol B'nai Yisrael. So this is just the background, so we know where in the story this dialogue now is going to pick up between Moshe and Hashem. Okay, so Hashem tells to Moshe, following, Ad ana yina'atsuni ha'amazeh. How long is this nation going to vex me? Ad ana lo yaminu bi. And how long will they not believe in me? Despite all of the signs that I've performed in their midst, they still don't have faith in me. Akenu badever v'orishenu. I will smite them. That's my favorite word, smite. I will destroy them with dever, with a plague, and I will orishenu, and I will remove them. And I will take their inheritance, and I will give it, and I will make it you. From you will come a new nation that will be a goy gadol v'yatzum, a great mighty nation, but it will come from you. Now, this sounds, by the way, very, very familiar. We should resonate with this because we've heard it somewhere before. We're going to see a little bit later where we think we might have heard it before. Okay, Hashem telling Moshe he's going to destroy Am Yisrael. Okay, Vayomer Moshe el Hashem. Moshe says immediately to Hashem, V'sham u'mitzrayim. Egypt will hear. Egypt will hear that you took these people, this nation, from their midst. Seems a very strange puzzle. What is V'sham u'mitzrayim? Mitzrayim didn't have to hear that Hashem took them out of Mitzrayim, but clearly this Kileta B'chochacha is parenthetical in Moshe's words to Hashem. It's really clearly, it's not that the Egyptians need to hear that Hashem took them out with because they knew that, they had witnessed it. The Amru, however, the Egyptians will say El Yoshev Haaretz Hazot, to the inhabitants of the land of Canaan, Shamu ki ato Hashem. We heard that you are Hashem. Be careful, that Hashem is in the midst of this nation. She'ayin ba'ayin nirat Hashem, eye to eye. Hashem appears, but anan chol made alehem. Your cloud stands upon them. And with a cloud of a pillar of cloud, you travel before them by day, and a pillar of fire by night. So Hashem's presence is always visible. The Egyptians realized that. Of course, they realized it too late. They should have realized it before they all ended up in the sea. But okay, but at least at that point they realized, at least according to Moshe, that's what they're going to tell the inhabitants of Canaan, all that they've witnessed. But then when you, Hashem, kill this nation as one man, all going to die immediately. The Amruha Goyim, all of the nations, that heard about your wonders, are going to say, what are they going to say? Mibilti Yecholet Hashem. Because Hashem, Kiviyachol, didn't have the ability, Laviat Amazet, to bring this nation, Elarat Asher Nishbalem, to the land that he promised to give them by Yishchatem Bamidbar. That's why he killed them all in the desert. Not because they sinned, not because they deserved it, but people won't look into the facts, because that's what anti-Semites do. They don't care about facts. Whatever they can say about that's bad about the Jewish people, that's bad about Hashem, they will say. Okay, the point is they're not looking to justify what Hashem has done. And that's exactly what Moshe is telling them. That if you destroy Am Yisrael, it's going to cause a chilul Hashem. Because why? Because the world's going to say, Hashem couldn't have done it. He just ran out of power. Chas v'shalom. So Moshe is making this argument to Hashem that you can't Can't kill them all. Sorry, Hashem. There are many places in the Psalms that where David bases on this. Yes, but again, here's the point where we plead with Hashem that you can't destroy us because of what the world will say. It will cause a chil Hashem. There's many places in Tanakh where they're saying, but clearly Moshe is the one who is the father of this argument. They're saying, Hashem, you can't do what you want to do because it will create a chil Hashem. Although actually it's probably borrowed from Avram Avinu if we think about it, okay? Because that's what Avram's complaint to Hashem at Sodom. Hashem, how can you do something that will cause a chil Hashem? Okay, V'yata, and now Moshe says further to Hashem, Yigdal na koach Hashem. Hashem, your strength should be great. Kasher dibarto lemor, as you yourself spoke, saying, Hashem, erach apayim, Hashem is slow to anger, rav chesed, and abundant of mercy, abundant goodness. No say avon v'fesha, he is willing to forbear sins, and avon and pesha, two different types of sins, v'nakeh, and he cleanses v'lo yinakeh, some sins he will not cleanse. Pokaid avon avot al banim, he remembers the sin of the fathers to their sons, al shilashim only through 4 generations. Salach na, please forgive la'avon hamazek godel chasdecha. According to your great kindness, please forgive the people for this sin. Kasher nasata la'amazek, just like you've carried this people from Egypt until now. And Hashem's response is, Vayomer Hashem salachti kidvarecha. Hashem says, I will forgive them, but kidvarecha, according to your words. Now, it's interesting because these 4 words, Vayomer Hashem salachti kidvarecha, we should all be very familiar with. They are one of the pivotal phrases that we use on Yom Kippur. It is, and it seems strange because, hey, wait a minute, this is not Yom Kippur, this is Tisha B'Av, and yet we never on Tisha B'Av talk about Hashem Salachti Kidvarecha. So the Parshanim we're going to see, I hope, as we get enough time to go through it, Parshanim try to address when was Vayomer Hashem Salachti Kidvarecha? What does that mean when Hashem said Salachti Kidvarecha? Okay, but then we can. Then I'm going to skip. I'm going to continue. Let's go. V'ulam chayani. Hashem says, but there's a but to this one. Okay, v'malei kol Hashem et kol haaretz. Hashem's presence will fill the entire world. Ki chol ha'anoshim. All of the men haroim et kvodi v'et ototai, who saw my glory and my signs, asher asiti v'sayim b'midbar, that I performed in Egypt and in the desert. Vayinastu oti, they challenged me. This is 10 times they've challenged me. And they were not ready to listen to my voice. If they will see the land that I swore to give to their ancestors, all those who have angered me, vexed me, lo yiruha, will not see it. However, who will see it? My servant, Kalev, who had a different spirit within him, and he followed me faithfully. I will bring him to the land that he went to, and his seed will inherit it. However, as for the rest of the people, tomorrow, you're not continuing the journey to Eretz Yisrael. Go back. You're going to turn around slightly, and you're going to travel in a different direction. Instead of going north and west to Eretz Yisrael, you're going to go south and east away from Eretz Yisrael toward the land of the Amalekites that are living in the Emek, in the valley. Okay, so again, it seems a rather harsh punishment, but again, we have to try to understand what was going on. What did they really deserve? Clearly, from Hashem's perspective, it seems as though they deserve to be entirely wiped out instantaneously, immediately. Okay, we're going to skip the rest of the parak because I want to get to the Parshanim. And okay, let's go. Firstly, we'll go, as we usually do, I want to go to a comparison of Moshe's dialogue with Hashem following what we just read, and the comparison with some of the events that happened around Chet HaEgel and the Yom Kippur getting the Luchot. So firstly, if we look back in Shemot Parak Lamed Bet and Ki Tisal, we find the following pasuk. Firstly, in our parsha, Hashem immediately appears to Moshe and tells him what's going on, because Moshe knows what's happened. But again, if we go back to Chet HaEgel, Hashem first tells Moshe what's happened because Moshe is standing on the mountain. He doesn't know what's going on down around the mountain. So it's Vayder Hashem Moshe. Hashem tells Moshe, Lech reid. You have to go down. Because the people have been corrupted. They've immediately, quickly left the path that I commanded them. They made for themselves a molten calf. They bowed to it. They bring offerings to it. When they said, this is your leader Israel, your God Israel, who took you out of Egypt. So again, Hashem is at Chet HaEgel, which Moshe is on the mountain. He doesn't know about it. Hashem tells him what's happened. And then Hashem tells Moshe, and we see very interesting, again, over there, he says, I've seen that they're very stubborn, stiff-necked people. But here, Hashem doesn't say that. He says, how long are they going to continue to plague me? But again, notice the same, very similar. My anger will be kindled against them, and I will destroy them. And I will make you into great nation. The same thing here. Same phraseology is here. And again, Moshe in both cases responds by praying on behalf of Am Yisrael. But again, slightly different phraseology. Firstly, interesting because when at Chet HaEgel, Moshe's first comment to Hashem is, Lama Hashem why should you be angry? You took them out of Egypt. Why should you be angry? But it's interesting. There's no such parallel here. Moshe doesn't say, Hashem, you shouldn't be angry. He basically acknowledges and accepts the fact that Hashem, you're right. You've given them all these opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. They've complained, they complain. So we see that Moshe already is almost, if you will, is acceding to Hashem's accusation, if you will, against Am Yisrael. But again, very similarly, just like here, it says, there again, Moshe used the same thing. Why should you give the Egyptians cause to say that you took them out of Egypt to kill them? So then, but again, what does Moshe again say to Hashem there? He says, return from your anger. We don't have anywhere in our path, it doesn't say anything about returning from your anger, about forgiving them. Completely, Nachem means to completely regret that you had any desire for harming your people. Whereas we don't see any of that phraseology here. Okay, the other thing we don't see, Moshe at Chet HaEgel invokes the merit of the patriarchs. That's why we are on Yisrael, because of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Again, they're completely missing in our parsha. Why? Why is Moshe offering such a different prayer? His only prayer is it seems, if we look at it, and this way many of the parshas look at it, it seems that the only thing Moshe is asking Hashem to do is to give them a stay of execution. Basically, he's saying you can't kill them all at once because that will be a chil Hashem. But he doesn't say you got to forgive them and let them go into Eretz Yisrael. Seems to be that there's no tefillah. Okay, it doesn't seem to be here, as opposed to there. Interestingly enough, we know that of course there is the Shlosh Midot. Now we're switch from one point parshat Ki Tisa to another point. Okay, and if you notice in our parsha, Moshe invokes the Shlosh Midot, but he doesn't mention all 13 of them. He says Hashem Erech Apayim Rav Chesed. What happened to Hashem Kel Rachel Machanun? We know the tefillah, we know the Shlosh Midot, but they're not all in our parsha. There's only Hashem Erech Apayim Rav Chesed. No Se'avon V'Fesha. What happened to V'Chata'ah? What happened to No Chesed La'alafim? So there's a lot missing, and that's what we're going to try to focus on as we go through the parshanim. But again, here, what does Moshe ask? He says, just as like you've carried this people from now, forgive them. But again, the difference is very different. Here in the parsha that deals with Chet HaEgel, Vayinachem Hashem al hara asher diber lasot lemo. Vayinachem, he completely regrets and erases all of it. He doesn't say, now again, it's not completely forgiven, but it's almost completely forgiven. Whereas here it's Hashem just says, Salachti, I will forgive them to the extent kidvarecha, as you have requested. Okay? There's nothing about Moshe's request in the Chet Egel. Hashem al hara asher diber lasot lemo, the evil that he said he was going to do, which was to destroy them. But here it just says, Salachti kidvarecha. Okay, so those are some of the things that I want to try to focus on as we go through the parashanim here. As usual, we start with Rashi. Now, Rashi quotes that Hashem, Moshe does not begin with Hashem, Kel Rachum Machanu Erech Apayim is how he starts. Why does he start with that? Because that's La Tzadikim V'Lo Rishaim. Because when we say Hashem is Erech Apayim, Hashem is slow to anger, or he draws out his anger. Hashem, it means both for those who are righteous as well as those who are not so righteous. And that's why Moshe focuses on that to begin with, because that's what he's looking at this point. The people have not done tshuva. The people are still in rebellion. Okay? Now, Rashi quotes an interesting medrash of this dialogue between Hashem and Moshe. Kishala Moshe Lamaro. When Moshe goes up to get the first time, when he goes up to Har Sinai, this is not the this is before Chet Egel. Matzah Moshe HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yoshev v'Kosev Hashem Erech Apayim. Moshe Kviyachol saw that Hashem is writing in the Torah. Hashem is Erech Apayim. Amrlo, so Moshe asks Hashem, Zat Latzadikim, to the righteous, you give the righteous. If the righteous make a mistake, you give them time to rectify their mistake. Amrlo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem answers him, no, Afli Rishayim. Even for the wicked, Hashem is Erech Apayim. Hashem gives them the opportunity, ample opportunity to do tshuva. Amrlo, Moshe answers, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rishayim Yovedu, the wicked should be destroyed. Why are you being Erech Apayim? Why are you, Hashem, giving them more rope? Why are you doing that? Amrlo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem answered, Mechayecha, Shetitz Tarech L'davar. Be wary of what you say, because you're going to need that Rishayim at some point future in your leadership role here. So Kishachatu Yisrael be'egel u'b'meraglim, when Bnei Yisrael sinned both by Chet Egel and by the Meraglim, Hitpala Moshe lefanav be'erech apayim. So Moshe uses this primary attribute of Kadosh Baruch Hu of erech apayim in his tefillah. It's a focal point in his tefillah. Lam Hashem yechara abcha b'yamecha. Again, is what he says at Chet Egel, and here he begins his tefillah with Hashem erech apayim. Erech apayim. Erech means slow to anger, or lengthening out of his anger. He doesn't take all his anger out in one shot against Am Yisrael. So now when Moshe comes back to Hashem and says, Ashir erech apayim, when they're sinning, Hashem says, you said I should only be erech apayim to the righteous. Amar so Moshe was able to answer, you answered me, even for the wicked, Hashem is slow to anger. So we see that's why, again, both of these tefillot, both at Chet HaEgel, at the Chet HaMeraglim, erech apayim is a critical component of the tefillah, because that's the attribute that Moshe wants most to focus on. Okay? Again, salachti kidvarecha. Because, like as you spoke, why am I willing to forgive them at this point? Bishvil masha amarta pen yomru mivilti yecholot Hashem. But you pointed out to me, Moshe says, Hashem, it would be a chilul Hashem if Hashem destroys all of Am Yisrael in one shot. Hashem says to Moshe, I agree with your words. You're absolutely right, and that's what. Because of that, I'm not going to destroy. Ulam, however, that's k'mo aval zoda selachem. But however, it's not a complete wiping away and cleaning of the slate. Okay, so there's going to be a consequence. So the consequence, of course, is that they're going to die over the next 40 years. Okay. Okay. Most comment is Hashem knew, quote, that it would be a chil Hashem also. You're right. Clearly, the point that Hashem is making is that without Moshe's tefillah, it appears that Am Yisrael would have been doomed, would have been wiped out. The whole point is not that Hashem didn't realize it would be a chil Hashem, because Hashem says, I could just I could destroy all of Eretz, all of the kings of Canaan that would mitigate. There are other ways that Hashem could have mitigated the Chil Hashem. There's no shortage of ways that Hashem could have made sure that it didn't cause a Chil Hashem. However, that's the point is that Hashem, when Hashem says, I'm going to destroy Am Yisrael, he's waiting for whoever he's saying that to, whether it's the Navi or the whoever it might be, to daven on their behalf. Why does he go to Avram and tell him about Sodom? Because he wants to hear what Avram's going to say. Okay, because Hashem is looking for leaders. Leaders are people who don't always just say, oh, okay, Hashem, that's what you want to do, go for it. Okay? Because not that Hashem can't, because Hashem can do whatever he wants. We know that. But the purpose of leadership, especially leading Am Yisrael, is to speak up on behalf of Am Yisrael. That's the whole point of this. It's not that, quote, Moshe has to point it out to him. No. But the point is that if Moshe doesn't bring the argument forward, he's failed in his leadership role. That's the point. I think the Torah is trying to make, and the Parshanim are trying to make. Okay? Okay. So again, and Rashi ends with, by the way, okay, it's there will not cause a Chil Hashem. Why? I agree that you said if I cause a plague, it will be a Chil Hashem. Therefore, I'm not going to kill them immediately. Like one man, they're going to all die. Over the next 40 years, they're going to die out slowly. All of this generation is not going to get into Eretz Yisrael. It's going to die out slowly over the next 40 years. Why didn't Moshe go further? Great question. Why? Oh, wait. Why didn't Hashem go further? Why didn't Moshe go further? That's, I think, one of the underlying questions of the parsha that hopefully we'll have a chance to address. Lois's question very simply is, why does Moshe, basically, it seems, at least from the parshanut, seems is only davening that Hashem shouldn't kill them all as one, rather than asking for complete forgiveness. Perhaps, okay, I'll say this at this point now, but we'll see what Parshanim have to say. I hope, although I don't know. Perhaps part of it has to do with the fact that tafasta meruba lo tafasta, tafasta muat tafasta. There's a saying in the Gemara. I'll translate for you in a minute. It says if you go for too much, you try to take too much, you'll end up with nothing. If you try to get a little bit, you may be successful. Okay, and there are other times, there are places where that comes into play. Perhaps Moshe realized, again, Hashem says, it's already the 10th time I basically had it. This is it. Why does Hashem focus on Why is he mentioned that it's the 10th time? As a matter of fact, there's a whole machloket among the Parshanim what the 10 times are, whether it's exactly meant to be exactly 10 or Hashem is using 10. Hashem is using 10. Whenever we find 10, it seems to me, and somehow it relates to creation. Okay? The fact that when Hashem quotes the number 10, it rates us back to the 10 mamarot, the 10 stages of creation. And what Hashem is really saying is 10 is the limit. That's it. The straw that broke the camel's back, the 10th time. So Moshe, I think, has already in the back of his mind an understanding that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to give them complete forgiveness and keep going like he did it at Chet HaEgel. Okay, and that's my gut feeling, and I think that the psukim bear that out. Okay, Ramban. When the Egyptians hear that you've killed them, okay, ki haleta, but what does that mean? Ki haleta, that you took them out of Egypt, is asher haleta. Rambam says the Egyptians will hear that you took them out of Egypt and then you killed them all in the desert. The Haimra'u, because they saw they don't need to hear that you took them out of Egypt. The Haimra'u, they saw the great power of Hashem when he took them out of Egypt. When they will hear that you killed all of Am Yisrael, lo yomru shechatulach. They won't say, oh, it was because they sinned, of course. Ella shekenegdam yesh lecha yecholet lilachem. Okay, we Egyptians were not so strong, so Hashem was stronger than we were, so he was able to fight against us. Avalo keneged yosher tzazot. But those people in Canaan, they're stronger than the Egyptians. They'll be able to wipe God out. That's what the Egyptians will say. What are they going to say to the inhabitants of the land? Why? Why would that be? The inhabitants of Eretz Yisrael, the spies just said, they're powerful, they're giants. We saw the kids, we saw everybody there. They're powerful. Paro was one king. Maybe he was a king over a great country, but in Israel, in Canaan, there were 31 powerful kings. Lashon Rashi, that's what Rashi says. Im Kain, and according to Rashi's explanation, El Yoshev Haaretz Hazot, to the people of the land, Al Yoshev, concerning the people. And that use of El for Al is rather normal, according to Ramban. Ulafidati, however, that's Ramban trying to explain Rashi, or how Rashi understands Moshe's argument to Hashem. Ramban himself says, Ulafidati, Ein hakavon leMoshe Rabbeinu b'tana azot b'nei shekananim chazakim v'giborim b'milchama. He's not saying, Moshe isn't saying that they're going to claim that the Canaanites were stronger. So what? So that wouldn't, big deal. Ki Hashem, he caught Mitzrayim b'dever. Hashem struck Egypt with dever, with plague. They meet b'chorem, he killed all the firstborn b'rega in an instant. He brought all these terrible, dreadful plagues from the heavens. Be easy as pie for Hashem to do the same thing to these quote powerful warriors of Canaan. Hashem could wipe them out instantaneously. The Egyptians wouldn't think that. Aval, what did Moshe mean to say? Why would it cause a chil Hashem even worse? An even worse chil Hashem. Yechashru Mitzrayim. The Egyptians are going to think the Yomru, and they will say, Ki yesh koach belohei Canaan latzil miyadecha. The gods of Canaan are stronger than the gods of Egypt. And guess what? They're stronger than God. Okay? The gods of Canaan are stronger kivyachol than Hashem. That's what the Egyptians would say. Why? Not only did Hashem punish the Egyptians, he destroyed all their idolatry. He smote the Nile, he smote all the idols, all of the things that the Egyptians worshiped were all destroyed also, not just the Egyptians themselves. If he can't do that in Canaan and to their gods, it must be that their gods are more powerful. That will be a great chil Hashem, because why? It will strengthen all those idolaters in Canaan. Will say, hey, look how strong our idols are. They were more powerful than God. He couldn't even bring the Jews here and defeat us. The im kain, and therefore yitachen sheyel Yoshev Haaretz Hazot kipshuto. Yoshev Haaretz Hazot means v'yamru el Yoshev. They'll say it to them. Sheyomra mitzriim li'anshei Eretz Canaan. The Egyptians will say to the Canaanites, Mi bilti yachol et Hashem. Why Hashem couldn't bring them in? Why keep Hashem el be'efes Elohim? Your gods are more powerful than God. Kiviyachol. That's what the Egyptians would have said had Hashem destroyed all of Am Yisrael. That's what would have caused a great chil Hashem. To think that there's anything that's more powerful than HaKadosh Baruch Hu would cause a great chil Hashem, and that's what Ramban says is what Moshe's tefillah was. Not that the Egyptians would think that the Canaanites were so powerful, because the Egyptians realized that Hashem could wipe them out. But the fact that he couldn't meant that their gods were more powerful. Kiviyachol. And that's exactly why Hashem hears it. Okay, Chis Kuni. Yigdal no koach Hashem. What is Moshe's tefillah? That midat harachamim tinatzeach lemidat hadin. That your attribute of mercy should overcome your attribute of judgment. Liflosh kascha, to overcome your anger. V'zeu koach, and that is the real power. Real power is the ability to control your anger. Kidichsiv, as we are told in the pasuk, as David Melch says, Tov erach apayim migibor. That's the way I said it. Or Mishlei, I always forget. I think it's in Mishlei, actually. Okay. But again, one who is slow to anger, who can control his anger, is more powerful than the greatest warrior. Because the greatest power that we have to rule over is ourselves. Another way of interpreting Yidal no Kavach Hashem li Elkoi, it's going further. Your strength should be more powerful. Show your power to everyone. That what? By showing that you will bring them into Eretz Yisrael, you'll be able to show your power. If you kill them all, there's no way for you to show how powerful you are, because the Canaanites will say, see, he wasn't powerful enough. Whereas if you keep them alive and bring them into Eretz Yisrael, that's how you will show your power. By destroying all of the kings of Canaan, that's how you will show your power, Hashem. Now it's interesting, he comments that Koach Hashem, even though the word is said Hashem, it's spelled with the Aleph Daled Nun Yud, which is normally we don't spell Hashem that way. We normally spell Hashem in the Torah is normally spelled Yud Hey, then Vav, then Hey. But in this case, it's spelled with an Aleph Daled, and he wants to comment, Kashir Dibar Top Maaseh HaEgel. Just like you spoke at the Maaseh HaEgel, with the Shlosh Midos, Yeshli Saron, Vishinoi Kani Mashe Yesh Parshat Yisizah. But however, if Moshe is referring back to the Shlosh Midot, where are they all? Some of them are missing. Amnam ein bekach klum. Piskuni gives the first interpretation. Why are only half the Shlosh Midot here? Don't worry about it. It's not that important. Why? He came derech b'chol mikra. This is the way we find often in Torah. Kesheshina hakosuf barav u'mishana pam shenit mipam mishana. When something is repeated in the Torah, often there are nuances, there are differences, and he doesn't want to focus right away on them. Okay. However, now we're going to get to them. Okay. Shem Erech Apayim. One way of looking at it is the differences are not significant, and there are parshas who want to say that. But again, now he's going to go into the significance between them. So. Aren't the Canaanites got to worry about Hashem got them lost? I don't think that's I don't think that's a factor. The fact that Bnei Yisrael spent 40 years in the Midbar is not a factor in anybody's thinking, because we see, if you think about it, you'll look 40 years later when the spies in Yoshua get to Rachav, they're all still fearful. They know it's not as though hundreds or thousands of years have passed. 40 years is not that. I mean, seems like a long time, but it's not that long a time. So, yes, they could wonder why they're staying, but obviously, again, if we think about it, they had to. They were raising them more. They were raising their kids. They were raising their families. They had to prepare psychologically, socially. They had to prepare to be a free people. You don't become a free people. You may become a free people overnight in one sense, but again, they had to leave all of their experiences in Mitzrayim behind. That takes a whole generation. That takes 40 years. Okay. Going further, Hashem Erech Apayim Lo Hiskir Kan El. Why doesn't it say Hashem Erech Erech El Rachum L'Chanun? Why doesn't it say El Rachum L'Chanun? Leaves out El. El is powerful. Fishu Mashma Lashon Chozek Ubal Koach. Okay, it means somebody who is powerful and is strong. And Moshe doesn't want Moshe doesn't want Hashem to show his strength against Am Yisrael. So that's why he leaves out El, powerful. Rachum v'chanun, why doesn't he mention Rachum, merciful, Chanun, gracious? Lo hizkir mishum d'shayche gabe matana. That's only relevant when somebody is giving. Because Chanun, to give is a graciousness, is when you give something. Moshe does not request of Hashem that he give them anything. He just wants him to forgive them. He's not asking for anything that he should then, as opposed to Chet HaEgel, where Moshe not only wants Hashem to forgive them completely, but renew his covenant with them. Here he's already just wants Hashem to forgive them. So again, we see this a lowering perhaps of expectations on Moshe's part as to what might be acceptable. Now again, it doesn't say emet. It just says Rav Chesed. It doesn't say emet. Lo rata lahaski. Why doesn't Moshe want to mention emet? He doesn't want Hashem to address the truth, because the truth is they were deserving of punishment. So he doesn't want Hashem to address emet. The emet mashma kav hamishpat. Emet means justice. Whatever you've done something, you got to face the consequences. Kidamrina Torah dichsiva emet ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu also bo lifnim mishrat hadim. When it comes to Torah and emet, when you want emet, you want truth. That means Hashem can't go above and beyond the letter of the law. It has to treat you exactly according to the letter of the law. Which means if you rebel, you're deserving of punishment. Davar acher, another interpretation. Lo hiskir emet. Why doesn't he want emet? Lo rotza sheye'amed HaKadosh Baruch Hu ma'ashamar kenu b'davar. Shem just said, I'm going to destroy them. Moshe doesn't want to mention emet in the same context of their destruction, that is emet. Because when we say emet, we think about it, it's the equivalent of saying amen. I believe that's right. Whatever you just said goes. So Moshe does not want to mention emet in this context. That's another reason why emet is left out. No tzar chesed, one who gives kindness. Lo hiskil ifishem lo asu chesed. Shein tzaru lahem ela pashu. Can't say no tzar chesed, creator of kindness, because Am Yisrael did not act appropriately. They rebelled against Hashem. They sinned against Hashem and rebelled against Him. So Moshe doesn't want to mention no tzachesed. The chata'ah lo hiskir. He doesn't mention chata'ah. The fishu lashon shogeg. This is a lashon. Chata'ah means Hashem forgives inadvertent sins. However, here, not an inadvertent sin. How do we know the chet means shogeg? However, that from a pasuk that we have a chet b'shgaga, a person will sin inadvertently. The haim zadu upashu. Their sin was a willful sin, so therefore it can't. He leaves all of these out. That's exactly what he says. Okay, now salach no lavon hamazeh. Moshe's final plea is forgive the people for this sin of the meraglim. Why does he add, like you carried the people from Mitzrayim till now? That you forgave them for the Chet Egel and allowed them to come this far. So just like you forgave them then, you should forgive them now. Okay, now Hashem says what? Salachti kidvarecha. I've forgiven as you said. Now, what does that mean? Salachti means I forgave them already. Ha'amachat b'masa egel. I forgave them once already for the Chet Egel. Bitarti lahem. Not only did I forgive them, I completely wiped it out. Aval achshav lo eslach lahem aval eparmem. Now I cannot forgive them. They're going to be consequences for this sin. Davar acher. Another way of interpreting salachti. Salachti saleach ani. I will forgive them. Ki devarecha. However, only according to what you request. Kemosha amarta sheyesh alai lasod. Like you said, what I should do. Hello, appeal dever. There will not be a plague that will kill them all at once. Amarta erach apayim. I should stretch out my anger. Hareini marich api alehem miloach alemata. I will do exactly as you requested. I will stretch out my anger, and I will not destroy them immediately. Amarta nosi avon hareini tole al avonam. Their sin will not be forgiven. It will be carried. I will carry that sin. They will carry that sin for the next 40 years. And actually for the rest of Jewish history until we are able to rectify that sin. Okay, we'll continue. Okay. You said I should remember that Hashem is one who remembers the sins of the fathers, for the sons, when the sons repeat the sin. Cain said, this is what I will do. The children will have to wander for 40 years in the desert together with their parents. The children won't, even though the children, we say, well, why don't the parents all die in the desert? The children go in right now. Why do they have to wait 40 years? The answer is because of the parents. They have to wait 40 years. As a result of this chet, the children are not going to be able to immediately enter Eretz Yisrael. They're going to have to wait 40 years. I mean, some of the children aren't even born yet. They're ultimately going to get into Eretz Yisrael. But even the ones who are born or less than 20 are not going to get into Eretz Yisrael. They're going to have to wait the full 40 years till we get into Eretz Yisrael. Okay, that was Litzkuni. I'm going to skip that to Canaan because it's a lot of the same stuff. And I'm running later than I expect. I already did Ramban. Oh, no, I didn't do Ramban. Rashi. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay, just one line from the Ramban I want to quote is this. We asked why in Moshe's tefillah in Har Sinai he mentions Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Here he doesn't. Very very simple. Vatam bavur she'aretz nitna la'avot. The land was given to the avot. Hashem promised land to the avot. Umehem Yehoshua. That's our entire claim to Eretz Yisrael. Hashem promised it to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Behema mordim ba'avotam. They are rebelling against their heritage. They did not want this gift that Hashem promised them. That their parents wanted. Avot wanted to live in Eretz Yisrael. Avram comes all the way from Ram Naraim to come here. So too Yaakov wants to come home. He wants to be in Eretz Yisrael. So how could Moshe say that you swore to them, I will give this land to their children, when the children don't want it? So that's why, again, the whole reference to the avot is missing. Okay. And here Ramban says finally, he closes upon which is what I said. Kihu lohi palalim cholahem. Moshe's tefillah is not that Hashem should forgive them, because he realizes that would be futile. That he should not punish them all in one shot for this chet, that he should have it over time. And that's exactly lo haita tfilato shalema aleihem. His tefillah for them was not a complete tefillah. But he doesn't mention it in Dvarim, because the people would have said, hey, how come you didn't give a more of a tefillah? That's exactly what Rahman said, that his tefillah is not a full tefillah. He doesn't pray that Hashem should completely forgive him like he did at Chet HaEgel. Okay. I'm going to go through for one more thing here at the bottom, because my time is running out later than we thought. I just want to choose two quick thoughts from the Malbim to end. Okay. Hashem says to Moshe two things. Ad ana yinatsuni, how long will they continue to vex me? And ad ana alo yaminu bi, how long will they refuse to have faith in me? And Malbim wants to say that this is directed to two different things. Number one, he wants to say there's two different possibilities here. If they have faith in Hashem and His power, it's not. They didn't sin because they didn't believe Hashem could do it. Only because they like to be rabble rousers and troublemakers. If that's the whole reason, Hashem says to Moshe, they know Hashem, and because they know Hashem is forgiving, they keep pushing. Like the kid who always pushes his parents, come on, everybody's doing this, everybody's doing this, until you put your foot down and say no. So that's what we're saying. If that's the case, how much longer are they going to keep pushing the boundaries to see how much longer they're going to get me angry? But if the reason is that they believe God can do anything He wants, but they just feel like rebelling, they're just a bunch of rabble rousers, then I just, how much longer can I take them just being troublemakers and rabble rousers? But if the reason that they sin, if they still, after all I've done for them, don't believe that Hashem has the power to do whatever He wants and to give them Eretz Yisrael, how long will they not believe me? Have faith in me. They've seen all of these signs I've already done for them. I've done in the midst. It's time that they should start believing in me. How much longer is it going to take? Hashem says they're never going to believe in me. So time for them to leave the scene. It's basically what Hashem is applying. Either way, if they're just trying to complain, then I've had enough already. It's enough. I've given them enough chances. And if they're complaining because they still don't believe, I've given them enough chances. I've shown them enough signs. That's it. So either way, Hashem says it's time for them to move forward. Time for Am Yisrael to move forward. They were scared. There's no question that they were afraid, that they allowed themselves to be distracted and become afraid. That's clear. But the point of the matter is very, very simple. If they had the faith that they were supposed to have in Hashem, if you come and you know that whatever is going to happen, Hashem is in control. He's going to make sure that if Hashem promised He's going to give me something, He's going to give it to me. Although I will tell you, we have Yaakov. We have the prototype case is Yaakov, who says, if I come back and still Hashem is taking care of me, when Hashem just promised He'd take care of him. But there it's different because Yaakov doesn't doubt that Hashem can take care of him. He knows that he doesn't trust himself. He doesn't have faith in himself. He says, I can't do it. I might sin. And then Hashem's promise to me, which is a conditional promise, might be null and void. Am Yisrael isn't thinking that. They're not at that point of faith in Hashem yet. That's exactly what Hashem is telling Moshe. They're not there yet. And how much longer is it going to take for them to get there? The answer is they're never going to get there. That's what Hashem's conclusion is. This it's not that they were rabble rousers. It's not that they're rabble. It's they are afraid because they've taken Hashem out of the equation. Here it is. They can visibly see the presence of Hashem 24/7, and they've put it out of their mind. Just like we, every day, we can see Hashem 24/7 when we're looking for Him, but we don't think about it. It's kind of, we're distracted. That's the job of the Yetzer Hara, to make sure we're distracted. He does a very good job, and it's challenging. It's tough. It's tough to overcome and to stay on focus. But that's your mission as a Jew. That's your mission as a human being, to stay focused on the fact that Hashem is here. Hashem is with us. Hashem can do whatever He chooses to do, but so can we. And we have to choose or make our choices in accordance with Hashem, what Hashem wants us to do. Not because we are afraid of Hashem. We want to do it because we love Hashem and we want Hashem to be part of our lives. Just like when you love someone, you want to do what they like you to do. Even if you would rather not do it, but when you love someone and you want to please them, that's what you do. So that's the kind of relationship you want to have with Hashem. We'd like to have it with Hashem, but again, some people can't have that, and it's hard to keep that focus 24/7 when you're in this physical world. It's very hard, very, very hard. Okay, all right. We're going to stop here because time is up already. We're already on overtime. But again, I think that it's clear the focus that we have to have is very simple. Number one, we have to remember that Eretz Yisrael is a gift from Hashem. Whenever we are talking about Eretz Yisrael, we have to always focus on the positive. When we talk about Medinat Yisrael, we can be honest and tell, yes, is the government doing the greatest job? Maybe not. We don't know. But if we're talking about Eretz Yisrael, whenever we're talking about Eretz Yisrael, we have to always focus on the positive. That was the problem of the Meraglim. Instead of focusing on the positive, they took all the gifts that Hashem presented to them in Eretz Yisrael during they were there. They looked at it from the negative side instead of from the positive side. When we are able to look at things from the positive side, especially when it relates to Eretz Yisrael, then we can, and we realize that it's positive because HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises us, I'm bringing you to a beautiful land. Everything about Eretz Yisrael is beautiful. We have to be able to see that. We have to be able to look beyond the day-to-day, the petty little challenges that we face, and they may be hard. They may be not, when I say petty, I'm talking about in a global sense. Okay, but clearly, yes, some of us have very, very tough challenges that we face here every day. I don't want to minimize them. But the challenge is realizing that in Eretz Yisrael is the only place that we, the Jewish people, can be successful. And when we are able to do that, fix that, and by the way, rectify this second little thing of making sure that we are speaking only Lashon Tov, not speaking Lashon Hara, not hurting others through our power of speech, then we can be zocheh to undo the terrible chet of the Meraglim, the chet that caused Tisha B'Av, and be zocheh to gula shleima b'mheira of Yameinu. Thank you all. I open it up for questions, comments, feedback at this point in time. Okay, 1 second. I'll answer the question. Lois' question: did the Avot ever literally get Eretz Yisrael? The answer is clearly yes and no. Okay, Avraham. Did Avram get a piece of Eretz Yisrael? Yeah, he bought it. He bought a piece where he buried Sarah. He had. He was able to pitch his tent in different places. Did he ever own? Was he ever seen as the owner of Eretz Yisrael in his lifetime? No. Same thing with Yitzchak. Yitzchak again has to go and fight over wells, over water rights. Yaakov clearly has again one piece of property that he buys where he pitches his tent, and everybody that again. But if you think about it, those two pieces of property that Avram and Yitzchak bought, as well as the piece of property that David Hamelech buys, are the 3 points that the Arabs quote claim are theirs. Hebron, which is where Avram buys Marat HaMachpelah. Shechem, where Yaakov buys a plot of land when he arrives back from Lavan that ultimately becomes where Yosef is buried. And, of course, Har HaBayit. And these are always the 3 points that will determine whether we really are ready to fight for Eretz Yisrael. When we're ready to say, those 3 are ours and ours only, and we're not giving them away, then we will be able to face the world and say, Eretz Yisrael is ours. But if we give them away and allow others the rights to those 3 pieces of land, we've got a problem. Okay, and that's the problem the politicians have had in the past, and it haunts us to this very day. Enough said. Any other questions or comments? Okay, have a good rest of the week all.